Welcome, my friends of the interwebs. I'm probably going to be shooting myself right in the foot with this video, but I don't give a rat's ass. I am not a known giver of fucks. I'm just not. So anyway, all right, this is going to be the question. I'm going to throw this out there right out of the gate. I'm not sure what I'm going to call this video, but it'll probably be something similar to this, what I'm about to say. Well, you know what? I better give a disclaimer first. FPS Russia, I'm not even going to use his real name. FPS Russia, aka Dmitri, I can't remember the Russian last name, but it doesn't matter. We'll just call him FPS Russia from this point on. Is presumed innocent of any wrongdoing in the connection of the death of Keith Ratliff. Okay, let me just throw that out there. I also am going to say that I have no information that is outside of what everybody else has. I have nothing outside of the realm of what the public already knows. Everything that I'm about to say will be purely speculation. And once again, FPS Russia is presumed to be innocent. And if he is in any way described as a murderer, it will be as alleged. Because as far as I know, he is absolutely innocent, and I do not really want to convict him in a court of public opinion either. Although, I think there's some interesting things that should be talked about. Now, I have talked about some of these things to fellow YouTubers over the last few months, and I've always said that I didn't want to make this video, and I didn't. Except for there's just some things that just aren't adding up. And I kind of feel like maybe there should be a public discussion about this, because there's just some things that just seem bizarre. So, having said that, let me start out this conversation by saying that I'm going to theorize, and it will solely be speculation as to how or why FPS Russia was involved in the death of Keith Ratliff. Okay, that's going to be that's going to be what this video is going to be about. If that's going to upset you, if you are a FPS Russia fanboy, and it will upset you to hear about him being talked about as a potential alleged murderer, then this is not the video for you, and you need to click off right now. Because the big boys are going to, the adults are going to have a conversation. Don't listen to me, I'm such a dick. Sorry about that. I didn't actually mean to say that. So anyway, let me start this by saying, and I think I've done that 3 times already, but I'm going to do it again. Let me start this by saying that Keith Ratliff was known to me. And what I mean by that is 3 days before his death, he actually contacted me. And we had a very long phone conversation. A long phone conversation. I mean, seemingly hours, but I don't know that it was that long. But it was a long conversation. He had contacted me because he was... he wanted me to join the now defunct Guns, Guts, and Glory network. And now I'm not special. A lot of people talk to him about that. In fact, most of my friends talk to him about being in that network. So I'm not claiming to be anybody special. I'm just somebody that he looked at as having over 10,000 subscribers on my Mad Bad Voodoo channel, and he was interested in me joining this network. It was a full screen network is what it was. So anyway... we talked for a long time, and during this conversation, he said some really interesting things. I remember this is 3 days before he was murdered. One of the things that he said to me was that he was partners with FPS Russia. I'm just going to call him that, FPS Russia. He was partners with FPS Russia at a 50-50 level. So for every dollar they made, they split it right down the middle, 50-50. And he also told me, now, let me qualify this next statement by saying this. Keith said a lot of things, not only to me, but to other people, that, how can I say this, were not true. I mean, I hate to speak bad of the dead, but I'm going to have to just call a spade a spade. Keith was a salesman. He was a good salesman. And some of the things that he said may have been a little on the fabricated side, basically. Well, let me just put it from one of my good friends on the interwebs, and it said that Keith was a liar. So, I know he's dead, and, to call a dead man a liar, but, hey, we just got to lay it out there. Because I'm going to try to make a case as to why FPS Russia actually took a role in the death of Keith Ratliff. So, I might as well be honest about it. As far as I'm concerned, I even got the feeling that Keith Ratliff was full of shit in a lot of ways. But having said that, full of shit or not, he told me that he was 50-50 partners with FPS Russia. He went on to say that the FPS Russia was actually his concept he had been contacted by somebody in the gaming community at one point, and they said to him, listen, you're a big weapons guy. There's a guy, he's a big gamer, and he he has this remarkable ability to mimic Russian accents, and just thought you might want to check this guy out. It's really kind of interesting. Well, then Keith came up with the idea of the FPS Russia YouTube channel, and then the rest is history. I mean, by far the most successful gun-related YouTube channel in the history of YouTube. And by far, not even close. I think the second closest YouTube channel would be probably Hickok 45, and I don't know what, I think Greg's got somewhere around 750, I'm guessing, 750,000 subscribers, and FPS Russia had well over 4 million. So yeah, he was a big deal, making a whole lot of jack. Speaking of a whole lot of jack, see, the reason I'm even making this video is because a lot of things were said in the conversation with me and Keith that didn't jive with some of the things that were publicly said by FPS Russia's representatives, and I think even him himself. And that's kind of why I feel like I should probably maybe even talk about this. So, Keith Ratliff had said to me that FPS Russia and him, FPS Industries, made about $400,000 a month. Now, when I say that, that's also one of the reasons I talked about, you know, him being maybe somewhat full of shit. You know, I think when he was trying to convince me to become part of this Guns, Guts, and Glory network, this full screen partnership network, I think that, you know, he was trying to sell himself as being somebody that was uber successful. Now, having said that, you know, anybody that can do basic math, and anybody that has an AdSense account and can do basic math, can pretty much come up with how much money the FPS Russia, the one, and there was a few channels, but how much the main channel was actually making in a month. And it was a staggering amount of money. Now, it was not $400,000, but it was a staggering amount of money. So why do I bring that up? Well, there's reasons. Hold tight. So anyway, so Keith and I had this conversation, and like I said, it was more about me joining the network, and him telling me how awesomely successful him and FPS Russia had been. And we ended the conversation. You know, I'll be honest with you, I'm not one to join groups. I'm just not. I've always been kind of a lone wolf, a solo act. The closest thing that I've ever come to joining a group would be what me and Krista does. And for those of you who do not know, Krista Blade is my niece, and you know, we collaborate on a lot of stuff together. I'm her cameraman in some situation, not always, probably 30% of her videos, 70% she does her own. But anyway, irregardless, for the most part, I am a lone wolf, and I never really wanted to get into that whole network thing. Now, the people who did get into the Gun, Guts, and Glory network regretted the hell out of it, and they all got out of it. I think they're all out of it now. But it became a nightmare for them. And, of course, Keith was gone, so now I guess some people would say the reason that the Gun, Guts, and Glory network did so poorly was because Keith was no longer in charge of it, because he was dead. Well, you know what, though? Paintballkitty became in charge of it at one point, and she pretty much is FPS Russia's agent, so if she couldn't make it work, I don't think anybody could. So anyway, I declined. Well, I shouldn't say I declined. I told him I would think about it. And the funny thing is, he was supposed to call me back, and he never did, and I remember thinking to myself, well, you know, maybe he's realized that I'm just not a follower. You know, I don't know. I was actually, at one point, I was actually somewhat miffed that he hadn't called me back, because I'm thinking, well, what the fuck? You know, he said he was going to call me back and he didn't. By that time, I had already convinced myself that I didn't really want to be part of this network anyway. So, anyway, bottom line, he got killed. He was killed. I remember, I can't remember how I found out, but I remember it might have been somebody called me, somebody that was in that network called me and said, dude, did you hear Keith Ratliff was killed? And I was like, what? I just talked to this dude 3 days ago. And they're like, yeah, no, he was assassinated. And I'm like, holy shit. So we're talking about this debacle and or murder and stuff, and I thought to myself, you know what? I kept going back to something that Keith had said to me about how they were 50-50 partners. How basically for every dollar that FPS Industries made, it was a 50-50 split between him and, well, we'll call him FPS Russia. And I remember thinking to myself, there's 2 main reasons why people get murdered. 1 is money, 2 is sex. And if you can combine the 2, money and sex, Well, somebody's got to die. It's just the rules. So, you know, now there are millions of reasons why people get killed, but the two main reasons, and I'll bet you anything, you can tie a lot of them. Hey, look, if a crack deal goes bad, drug deal goes bad, guess what? It was about money. Drugs is money. Okay? I mean, insurance deals, how many people have gotten insurance policies on their spouses and then managed to kill them off? I mean, you know, money, sex, greed, it's all kind of tied in there. And we're talking about if, hey, let's say Keith was half exaggerating. You know, because Keith said $400,000 a month. Let's say he was half exaggerating and they were only making $200,000 a month. And each one of them were making $100,000 a piece. Now, you would think that most normal people would be happy with $100,000. But if you're the, well, you know, I'm gonna lay out my theory. I don't want to jump ahead of it, though. So anyway, so I actually jumped online. As soon as I heard that Keith Ratliff was killed, I jumped online and I started reading everything I could about it. I mean, I was just fascinated by it. I think he's, well, in fact, I know he's the only person that I've known to ever be murdered, especially, you know, when they're describing it as a hit, that I had literally just talked to. So I was kind of fascinated. So I'm reading everything there is to be read. Everybody's read this stuff. It's all available online. But it was interesting, you know, some of the things that went down. Of course, there were conflicting stories at first. Some people said he was killed on the side of a road. Some people say he was tied to a chair and shot in the head. You know, actually, to this day, I'm still not exactly sure how it went down. All I know is that, from all accounts, he was killed, murdered, and it was by somebody that was close to him. Let me get to that. So I'm reading an article, and it interviewed Keith Ratliff's wife, his widow. And the interesting thing that she had to say, or the thing that kind of piqued my interest, was that she said it must have been somebody that he knew, because he was surrounded by guns and he would have tried to defend himself. He was a weapons expert. Everybody described him as that. So somebody got the drop on him. Well, who can get the drop on you? Well, clearly somebody you know. Now, I've heard speculation it was the Russian mafia. Of course, you know, that speculation probably has more to do with the fact that the FPS Russia shtick is a Russian thing, you know. But just so you know, FPS Russia, the dude, if you go to Wikipedia, you'll know his real name, lived in Georgia. His dad was born and raised in Georgia. So, lived on a farm. He was a farm boy from Georgia. And I'm not talking about the Republic of Georgia in Eastern Europe. I'm talking about Georgia in the United States. You know, I'm talking that Georgia. So, anyway, so I found it interesting that she had said that. And it kind of stuck in my head that it must have been somebody that he knew. Well, okay. And then something else happened that was kind of interesting. The ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, in conjunction with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, raided FPS Russia's house and raided his father's farm. Okay? Now, the story that they gave when they did this raid was that they were looking for explosives. That was the story that they gave. They were looking for explosives in relation to YouTube videos. And I remember thinking to myself, that don't sound right. That sounds like a bunch of shit. Because any ATF agent worth of salt could tell from the explosions that he's seen on FPS Russia's YouTube channel that he was using tannerite. I mean, listen, these agents go through extensive training on this stuff. And so I knew that they knew that it was tannerite. They knew that, which is not illegal. You know, now there are some people that say, well, up to a certain amount and this and that. Listen, it was all crap. Then I hear that the sheriff of the county, now I know this for a fact, federal agencies do not like to tell the sheriff of the county anything, because the sheriff typically is corrupt. I'm just keeping it real. The sheriff's deputies are damn sure corrupt, and most of the sheriff's deputies are brothers and cousins, and everybody in the county knows each other. We're talking rural America here, okay? And I know this because I've got a lot of experience with rural county sheriffs. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. So basically the federal agencies don't tell them squat, because they know that the minute that they tell the sheriff's department that they're going to do X, Y, and Z, then whoever else is involved in X, Y, and Z will get a call from somebody in the sheriff's department or somebody that is connected with the sheriff's department in some way. And they're going to say, you better hide all your stuff, because I hear the ATF's coming, you know. Yeah, I know, it's a horrible accent, but So the sheriff in the county that FPS Russia lived, along with his father and the farm, he had said that that story that the ATF gave was a bunch of bunk. And that the reality is that they were searching for evidence in the death of Keith Ratliff. Okay, all right. So then I'm thinking, all right, well, I'm starting to get a little bigger picture. You know, I'm starting to actually see the forest through the trees. You know, I have that gift. I just do. So I'm putting all these pieces together, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, obviously, they were looking at the possibility that FPS Russia had something to do with the death of Keith Ratliff. Okay, which, you know, would make sense because you are talking about his partner. And, by the way, who has the most to gain if you're talking about a 50-50 partnership? And I don't know if it was a 50-50 partnership handshake. I really don't. You know, it's kind of hard to say because I know for a fact there are people who collaborate on YouTube channels who don't have any contracts with one another. They just say, hey, let's do this YouTube channel together. And that's what happens. Well, we'll split the money 50-50, anything we make. Ha ha. Well, you know, and of course, nobody going into that ever thinks they're going to make that kind of money. You know, and most of them do it just as something to do. I mean, you know, I keep thinking 5 awesome guys, 5 drunk guys. There's been a million YouTube channels that had collaborations where people took ownership of that channel and just the way it was. So I don't know what the story was with that. But I do know this. If it was a situation where there was no contract, and let's just say that the YouTube channel was started, you know, basically in FPS Russia's name, it wouldn't be a leap to think that if you got rid of, you know, Keith Ratliff, then all of a sudden all that money's yours. So now, here's the thing. The next piece of the puzzle, the next, how can I put this, light bulb of event was when Paintballkitty actually gave an interview. Now listen, Paintballkitty is the manager of, or the agent of, FPS Russia. And as such, she's entitled to a percentage. Now, I don't know what their agreement is, but most agents take 10%. And, but here's where it gets really interesting. Because remember I told you that it's money and sex. And if you can combine the two, you're almost done for. So anyway, so they raid, when the ATF raids, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation raids the house of FPS Russia, the interesting thing is that FPS Russia himself was not there. He was, quote-unquote, out of town on business, which I don't doubt, because he gets paid to go to gigs all the time, big money. He's like a celebrity. Well, he is a celebrity. So, for example, not all that long ago, he went to Chicago for a paintball tournament, I guess the world's biggest, and they paid him an enormous amount of money to be there. So anyway, so he was not there, but who was there? Well, Paintballkitty. She was staying at his house, his manager. Now, I have an agent. I have an agent. Believe it or not, I have an agent. And he's never stayed the night at my house, ever. In fact, he's never been to my house. So, this goes back to the speculation part. Remember I told you, well, this was going to be speculation on my part. And so I'm going to speculate that FPS Russia is a little closer than most agents and clients, or talent and agents. Let's just put it that way. I'm just going to take that stab. And I don't know Paintballkitty. I've watched some of her videos. I've heard her voice. She's a British chick. I don't know. But here's what I found interesting. She gave an interview. She gave an interview to a newspaper. I think it was a newspaper. Pretty sure it's a newspaper. The media, nonetheless. And what she said almost bowled me over. Because what she said was, everybody thinks, and this is going to be a paraphrase, everybody thinks that he has, and he being FPS Russia, has all this money coming in. And it's simply not true. The facts are that the FPS Russia YouTube channel makes enough money to live comfortably and make YouTube videos. No, hold the phone. Hold the fucking phone. I don't know who she was thinking about. I don't know who she was trying to get over on. I don't know what her version of living comfortably is. It may be Buckingham Palace for all I know. I don't know. But some things started to churn up in my head. It was, like I said, a light bulb moment, because I'm like, really? Now, why would she say something like that? Because here's the thing. If you only have basic math skills, and you have an AdSense account, and you look at how much it takes you to make X amount of dollars on your AdSense account, and then you go to the FPS Russia channel, and then if you're going to have a calculator, and then you multiply what you made based on the model that is of his, which is several tens of millions of views, you get to a number, a monthly income that is, shall we say, impressive, to say the least. You know, to say the least. FPS Russia channel was making a shit ton of money. So why would Paintballkitty spew that nonsense of, well, you know, it's just really enough to live comfortably, and everybody thinks there's all this money. Well, the truth is there is all that money. The truth is it's a whole lot of money. You know, now, you're overwhelmingly, the majority of us schmuckatellis on YouTube literally only make chump change. I mean, a little chump change. But I will tell you this. Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to tell you a little something. And this is, you can take this to the bank. This is the God's honest truth. I'm going to round it. I'm going to round the number, because it's really, I don't want to be in violation of any terms of service or anything like that. But I will tell you this. I have one video that is a cash cow video, okay? And that one video, well, I'll tell you, it's called Typical Obama Supporters Exposed, all right? And I filmed that back during the, the election cycle. And that video has made me several $1,000s. I'm not even going to tell you how much, because you're not supposed to talk about the money. Several $1,000s. Let's just put it that way. It was very nice for a minute and a half of my time. It was about what the video took. And all I could think of when that money came in from that video, all I could think of was that every single video that FPS Russia put up was 10 times the size of that. So that's all I'm going to say. Well, that's probably not 10 times, but it was much bigger. So anyway, so Paintballkitty is lying. Why? Well, she's trying to get ahead of it. She's clearly being an agent, clearly trying to do the PR, clearly trying to manipulate what was the story. She was trying to get ahead of the narrative and create her own. Basically it. Because bottom line, listen, reality is perception, perception is reality, and she wanted to get out there that he didn't have a lot of money coming in. The YouTube channel did not make a bunch of money. And she also said, by the way, this was another interesting quote in this article. You can find us online. I'm not making this stuff up. You can find us online, verify what I'm saying here. But what was interesting is she said, well, they were partners, they had a business, but after Keith's death, it fell apart. You know. So here's the two things. One, okay, they weren't making a lot of money. There wasn't a ton of money in being FPS Russia. Two, the minute that Keith Ratliff died, it all just fell apart. Just fell apart. Now, why is that important? Why are those two things important? One, okay, motive, money. Money motive. You have to eliminate that. You have to eliminate the motive, because listen, money and sex, remember? Money and sex. So you eliminate the motive of why FPS Russia would be involved in the murder of Keith Ratliff. So there was no money. And on top of that, why would FPS Russia harm a hair on Keith's head when clearly that business just fell apart after Keith's death? Why would you do that? Why would you shoot your cash cow? Clearly the business wasn't capable of being functional without Keith Ratliff. So there's no way FPS Russia would have ever hurt him. No, that would be like shooting himself in the head. So there you go. There was no money, and even if there was money, there's no way in hell that FPS Russia would have ever jeopardized that income stream by harming Keith. Okay. I'm sorry, but that's kind of the way I read it. That was the way I read it. I read her trying to spin the situation to remove motive for her man from killing Keith Ratliff. Now, I'm going to paint a picture here. This is complete speculation, as all of this has been. I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to say this. Okay, so Keith, it's not Keith, I'm sorry. So FPS Russia and Paintballkitty are in bed together, butt-ass naked, because they're a couple, okay? Enjoying one another's company, as adults do, adult couples do. So at one point she says to him, "Why are we giving Keith all this freaking money? You're the star. You're the face. We don't need him. Weapons expert, my ass. We can get a former Navy SEAL for $100 grand a year, and it'd be pennies on the dollar. You need to get rid of him somehow." You know? I mean, listen, I don't know FPS Russia personally. Honestly, I don't. He may be a really sharp guy. It's hard to tell with the Russian shtick whether or not he is. But he wouldn't be the first guy, and he won't be the last guy that's manipulated by a very, very manipulative woman. He wouldn't be. So it's possible that when Paintballkitty told him that, you know, he needed to get rid of Keith, that he took it in a literal sense. And it's possible that that's really what she meant. Now, having said that, Paintballkitty is innocent too. I don't know. This is speculation. They're presumed innocent. All this is alleged. So says my attorney. So says my attorney. So that's a possibility. That is an absolute possibility. Because listen, bottom line, FPS Russia has not made a video in 4 months. Over 4 months. He can talk all the smack he wants about how he's about to make a video, or he is in the process of producing a season of videos. But when you have a cash cow like FPS Russia, why would you not be milking it? Honestly, why would you not be milking that cow? You've left it out in the pasture? That's insane. And here's the other thing too. I looked. There's never been this long of a gap between FPS Russia videos. Now, there are, in fairness of this debate, or this discussion, I should say, there are legitimate reasons that I can think of that would keep him from making videos, one of which is Keith Ratliff's widow. Because if there was some kind of partnership that was legal, or even if there was one that was just implied, here's the thing. I mean, it may be one of those deals where you know, FPS Russia's attorney says, look, if you make videos, you're going to have to give her half of it, or maybe you probably shouldn't make any videos till all this gets cleared up. I don't know. I don't. I do know one thing, though. My battery's about to die in this camera. So I'm just going to say this. I do not know whether or not FPS Russia had anything to do with the death of Keith Ratliff. I do not know whether or not Paintballkitty had anything to do with the death of Keith Ratliff. All I am doing is speculating, and that is it. They are both presumed innocent until proven guilty. They've not been charged of a crime. I can only imagine that they've been investigated, but that would be a natural thing because of how close that situation was. So I just want to make it very clear that I am not in any way, shape, or form claiming that they had any part of it. Now, I also want to say that they are both public figures. FPS Russia and Paintballkitty are both public figures, and therefore this is not slanderous. This is just talking about public figures. So, okay, that's probably not going to keep me from getting sued, but I thought I'd just give it a try. So anyway, I don't know what channel I'm going to put this up on. Let me know in the comment section what you think. I hope that he makes a video soon. I hope that they find the murderer of Keith Ratliff and it's not FPS Russia. But, you know, people have been killed for a whole lot less. I'll be interested because, you know, no matter what Paintballkitty tries to say in the media, we're going to know how much money, in the end, we're going to know how much money was coming in. Now, I don't believe that they found any kind of evidence when they raided FPS Russia's house or his father's house. I don't believe they did, for a couple of reasons. One is, I think if they had found anything, they would have already indicted him. And two, they found, in their own words, unprecedented amount of firearms. In fact, the one agent said at one point they discussed confiscating them. Then they chose not to. Now, if they'd had any kind of evidence, I think, tying FPS Russia to the death of Keith Ratliff, they would have taken all those weapons. They would have. But they did not. FPS Russia is a famous person, and he has a big platform, and I think that they realized that it would have caused a shitstorm amongst the firearms community, and heads would have rolled if they would have just arbitrarily confiscated weapons without any kind of reason. So, but anyway, all this will come out in the end. I just wanted to throw that out there. Let me know what you think. Do you think there's some merit to what I'm trying to piece together? Basically the picture that I've painted for you. Do you think there's a merit there? If not, tell me why. And you know, who do you think killed Keith? Somebody killed him. Somebody murdered him. So anyway, having said that, everybody take care. See ya.